Hey, what's up? This is Casey with Covering Ground, and really excited to talk to you today about a modification I did to my Skeletor sticks, and that was building in an aider that's actually retractable with the stick. So one thing that I just want to get out of the way up top here is that anytime you mess with this sort of gear, it's inherently dangerous. Like, we're already climbing trees and, literally putting our entire weight and life in these pieces of metal. This is just what I did. Definitely don't take it as gospel, and if you do feel so inclined to tinker with your own gear, do so at your own risk. I'm not an expert, and I'd really encourage you to do your own research if you do get into the sort of stuff that we're going to talk about, and to sort of decide what feels safe and right for you. So first thing I want to say is this idea was inspired by the Timber Ninja C1, the carbon fiber sticks. I think like the coolest feature I've ever seen in a climbing stick is their retractable aider that comes out of the center tube of the stick. And so I wanted to do my own version of that and try to replicate that sort of thing with the Skeletors for myself, because simply put, I wanted that. Here's the deal. The Skeletors have a very narrow body, and there's not a whole lot of room in that beam. It's sort of built like an I-beam. So you can do the same thing that they do at Timber Ninja and just sort of have it in the body of the stick. So instead I was trying to get creative with these holes that run along the side, and I did some prototyping with some paracord and tried to figure out what was going to make sense or what would work or what design I liked. And I did end up settling on a design that I was pretty fond of. It was running through these holes and sort of keeping it close to the stick. What happened was, when I actually used cable for that instead of paracord, it's far less flexible, as you can imagine, and that caused it to hang up inside the stick. So I found this workable solution where I have a cable that has these keepers on the back, and then when I wanted to, I could pull it out, just pull it down and extend it, and that's fine. But the thing that I didn't like about this, it just put a lot of tension at this bottom part, and if you notice, there's actually vinyl biting away from all the pressure that's taken on in that one little point. This wasn't super clean. I didn't like the teardrop and how that sat on the stick, and how it's just sort of like flopping out underneath the stick, and then packing it up was sort of clunky. I had to push it in and then pull it and then loop it around up top. So there were a couple things that were cool, retractable-ish aider, but a lot of things I didn't like about this design. So got me thinking, hey, what's flexible like paracord, but I can trust my life with it, not like paracord? And that would be Amsteel. So I know Amsteel is notoriously slick. Normally if I need to make a loop out of paracord, I'll just tie a couple of, I think they're fisherman's knots, and pull them against each other, and that does the trick. But I didn't want to do that with Amsteel because it feels like a weirder, different type of rope that wouldn't take that as well. So I got deep in the rabbit hole and started looking into splicing rope and what that looks like and how it all works. Two big resources that I want to shout out is one, G2 Outdoors. So Greg has a couple videos on there where he talks about aiders that he's made, and that was super helpful for me as a novice. Definitely gave me enough information to be dangerous. And then the other one is the Amsteel guy, who has the Etsy shop and Instagram. Definitely go give him a follow. But he was a really great resource. Like, when I was doing this, I had already been messaging him about a couple aider related things. I just sort of asked him, hey, in terms of specs, is this sort of what you would do? And he said, yeah, absolutely. And hey, send me a picture when you're done. Super cool, super nice guy. So with that, we moved on from this prototype, and I have built the ultimate Skeletor aider integrated into my stick. As you can see, they stack very nicely, and the aiders here retract up pretty high. They could be a little bit shorter, but this gives me a good 19-inch step when all is said and done. So why don't we take one of these puppies off and look at it up close. Here's the finished product. Right up here, I have these keepers that I have installed, and that loops this Amsteel around the back. And then when I want to use the stick, I just pull this off of those keepers, and I'm able to pull the aider out, and that gives me my 19-inch step. When I'm done, I just take that right up the back, pull it up, loop it around, and then pull it back tight. And that's it. It's there. I can use it. I cannot use it. It's not a lot of extra bulk. And the one thing I like about this is, aside from the Amsteel, like, which I did have to order online, everything else I was able to get at the hardware store. I didn't have to like go to some weird website and order obscure parts. It was really, really simple to get the things I needed to do this effectively. So with that, let's get to that other stick. We'll cut off the old aider and we'll start building the new one. I want to talk through a couple key things to keep in mind as you're putting this together. So there's some basic hardware that you're going to need to get, and I'll talk through what I got, and I'll also put links to where I got this stuff. For this build, if you want to put aiders on all 4 sticks, the equipment list is as follows. You're going to need these cap bolts, I believe is what they're called. So I actually picked these up. There's a Rockler right near me, and that's what I'll put the link to, but I'm pretty sure you can get these at any hardware store. The length on this is 1 1/8 inch, and then it's a 1/4 inch bolt, and it's a number 20. The other 2 pieces of equipment are going to be just a regular 1/4 inch number 20 nut, and I use this black anodized 1/4 inch number 20 flange nut. You need 8 of all of these. You could get away with 4 of all of these, but if you're a neat freak like me, 8's going to be the ticket. The assembly goes as follows. You're going to take it and you're going to put it in this in-between section. It's the 3rd hole down from the top, 4th hole up from the tie off. So first we're going to take our regular bolt, and I just like to hold this between here with my fingers and run that bolt up through. And then at the top, I just push this up, hold it, and I tighten that flange nut down on top of it. So what you're left with here, this lip sticking out, and then this sort of sandwiched by a couple of nuts. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side quick. And just like that, we're all set. We have the keeper for the rope on there, ready to go once we get the Amsteel on here. That's step 1. Step 2 is going to be measuring out your Amsteel. So again, do your own research on this. What I'm using for this video and for my sticks is I'm using 1/8 inch Amsteel. So this would be 68 inches for one piece, one aider. All together, if you get a 25-foot spool of 1/8 inch Amsteel, it's going to give you more than enough to make your 4 aiders, and then you also have enough to do like a test loop. I did that ahead of time just because I was doing some prototyping and trying to figure out what was going to work best. And then one important detail is when you're measuring that out. So from the end, I've marked 1 inch in, and that's going to be where I start my taper, which we'll get to in a second. And then 6 inches from that, so 7 inches from the end, I have another mark, and that's where I'm going to start my berry. And so I just mark those ahead of time on all my ends. So on each end I want 1 inch in, and then 7 inches in total, 6 inches from the first mark. What that accounts for is just how much we're burying into the other side of the line, and it all ends up, I've done the math, I've done the trial and error, and it ends up making a really great, nice 19-inch step if you follow those parameters. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to run this through the standoff itself. So we are going to take this Amsteel. I'm going to start by putting it through from the inside to the back. I'm going to do that in the hole above the fold out steps here. We'll wrap this one around the outside, going under. And then the next part is these holes that are sort of almost triangular in the bottom, we're going to run those through there. So when you have that set up, basically it should look like it's coming out the bottom and then going up through the hole and then around the back, creating that lark's head. So again, this is the piece that eventually we'll be pulling up and putting around our keepers up here. But for now we can leave slack in that line. It's going to be helpful later on. So the next step is going to be getting the rubber tubing on, because we want to put that on before we actually splice it together. This is fuel line tubing that I got from hardware store, Ace Hardware, and this is a 1/4 inch diameter, and this is perfect for my use. The nice thing about it is once we have the lines spliced into each other, they end up being about a 1/4 inch thick, and there's a little like nub in the middle that stands out a little bit, and it helps to lock this in place. I wanted to have this like centered on the bottom at all times, so I was really happy with the friction fit that this gave me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a knitting needle. So for this, you're going to want a number 10 knitting needle. And then the other tool that I'm using is a looper. I'm misusing it because I'm using it as a pusher. This is not a pusher. But listen, if you watch that G2 Outdoors video, there's one that Greg links to where he talks about a fid that Ernie made and showed him. And I didn't have the patience to like wait for those pieces because I don't have like the webbing, but I highly recommend watching that, and I'm sure it'd make this a lot easier. I'm just sort of using what I have around because I want to get the job done. Another handy thing to have is a vise. So I've actually been using this quite a bit to hold things in place while I do some tinkering. So I'm going to use that right now. To feed that tubing over this line. So I can pull that back out, run that line up there, and I'm set. The next step is going to be to find the areas I marked for my berries. I'm going to take the same knitting needle, this number 10, and I've sawed off this 45-degree angle just to help seat things in there. I'm going to find my 6-inch mark, or my 7-inch from the end mark, and I'm going to find the center, puff it up a little bit, and stick this right through, creating a clean hole. So that's hole number 1. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here, hole number 2. I actually forgot one of the steps is to make the taper, so that's a really easy step. I'm just going to use a common nail to do this, but I go to my 1-inch marker and I'm going to separate it out like 4 strands is what I've been doing, and it's worked well. Three, do one more, 4. And you just pull those away from the main line, and I found that a fresh razor blade cuts through this really easily. So we'll do that. While I'm cutting these, I'll mention this isn't meant to be like a splicing video. Like obviously, like I mentioned, this is my first attempt at splicing, so I'm not an expert by any means. But what I intend for this is I want it to be a good representation of what this process is going to look like, so you can decide for yourself whether or not it's something that you want to pursue or try doing for yourself. So with that, we have our 2 tapered ends now. You can see they just get a little bit skinnier. It's going to help make the rope not be just like this big chunky like let off from a 1/4 inch to an 1/8 inch. I'm just going to reform these holes. So again, we're going to start by taking one end and putting it through the hole in the other line. Simple enough. And one thing to make sure, what we're doing here, if you want to look this up elsewhere, is called a locked Bremel. And what that means is we're, instead of feeding the lines into one another, like the ends, we're going to feed them through each other and then back into themselves. It just helps make a really secure splice. So what that means is after I put the first end through the other line's hole, I need to pull it through And I need that hole to go past. So the hole in the line I'm pulling through needs to go past the hole that just, you know what, the visual is going to be more helpful. So pulled it through until it went past. Now with this one, I'm going to take it and feed it through the other hole. So really we're just zigzagging the lines essentially. So what you're left with here is these two lines, and you can pull this together and you're going to get to this point where they're both just as tight as they can be. This is good. This is what we want. So now this is like the fun part, and by fun I mean the toughest part, and that is actually burying this line back in on itself. So again, I'm just gonna time lapse this, and you're gonna see I'm gonna use the vise. I'll actually move it over. One thing you want to do is you want to measure how long this needs to be buried, and then you want to give it a good couple inches beyond that. And that's going to, I'm just gonna put this nail in here as a stopper for myself, so I know like once I get to this point I should be good. The reason you want to overshoot it is because the line's going to expand as you put line into it, which means it's going to get shorter, and you don't want there to be like loose ends hanging out after you're done. While I'm at it, I'm just going to do the same thing for the other side so I don't forget. So I'll eyeball it a couple inches beyond it, puff that up. I'll just put a nail through here as a placeholder, working between those braids. Cool. Okay, so now I'm getting to my nail, so I'm going to pull that out and just find a hole nearby that I can work the knitting needle out through. So that works. So that's perfect. We have it all on the fid, makeshift fid. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it close to the end, and I'm going to take the end that I'm feeding back through, and I'm going to try to get it in the tube here to start. Push it in as far as I can. Once I get past that taper, it becomes a little bit tougher. And then I'm going to take my makeshift pusher. I'm going to lock this back into the vise. Again, this is a looper I got at Joann Fabrics for like $2. Nothing super crazy, and this knitting needle was $2 at Walmart, so not too bad. I'm just going to use this to sort of lock this line into place in this tube so I can pull this back over it and not have to worry about it coming out. And it works like a charm. So now I'm going to pull this all the way back. And this is when the magic happens, when that end disappears. So let's slowly start working that line out. And just like that, we have a beautifully tapered end going right into there. And we have one to go. So with this, it's going to be literally the exact same process, just on the other side. You want to get as close to the base as possible. So it should be happening like right at that hole is where you want the needle to go. And so the second one, in my experience, my very limited experience, has been more difficult than the first. But once you get it going, it's not an issue. It's just that beginning section. We're in. Keep working it. Now again, we're taking this end and putting it back into it itself. Just like that, we are ready to go. Pull out that braid, lengthen the line, and we have our completed reverse, our completed locking Bremel. So this is that nub I was telling you about, and what we're gonna do now is the final step, and that is sliding this tubing over that nub. So you can actually feel the resistance start once you go past that taper, which is really nice. And then I'm just going to pull that through until it's about centered. And there we have it. We have our step on there. Now I can put it up around those keepers, lock it in place, and then when I want it, I can take it off those keepers and pull it out. Very little weight to add to all four of them, and then I don't have to worry about height. I don't think. I should be able to get pretty high with these. I haven't tested it yet because I just got my fourth one on, but I'm going to make another video going into the woods and taking these up and seeing how high I can get. That's probably going to be part of a broader Skeletor review. But yeah, let me just put this on the stack with the other three. It's a thing of beauty. Look at that. They just all stack up so nice and neat. The cables are self-contained. I just love that I don't have to worry about more hassle. I think one of my favorite things about the Skeletor is the way that they have the Amsteel attachment method, and you can sort of stow it away on the stick. And so I love that I can get 4 aiders on there without adding a lot of bulk, and also keeping it nice and neat. I'm like a neat freak, so this is really big for me. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. We're definitely going to have more gear stuff coming out soon as we're heading into the off season. And also highly recommend checking out the G2 Outdoors channel and the Amsteel guy on Instagram. Super great dudes doing cool stuff. So yeah, appreciate you watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to comment below and we'll try to get back to you and help if we can. Thanks.